Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas region. Coming up next, we have our featured matchup, Eddie versus Firebat. It's going to be a Warrior Mirror, which isn't exactly the Warrior Mirrors that you may have seen in the past. One player choosing to play a little bit more of a standard lineup, and then one player going very different. But we'll tell you a little bit more about it. But first, let's go ahead and meet our players, Eddie and Firebat, and learn a little bit more about them.
My name is Eddie Liu, formerly Sehun628. Now it's just Eddie playing. When I first knew that, I received the email that I got into Grandmaster, I was really excited. I remember I was at school, I checked my email at 10:30, and I was hyped. I was like, oh my god, is this actually real? I know I had a reasonable, pretty decent chance, I would say, if the metrics just go by some points, and then some people are invited by prior performances, Firebat that won a world championship, for example.
My name is James Costasage. My handle is Firebat. Being in Grandmasters, to me, means that I get another chance to prove myself and show that 2014 wasn't a fluke and that I am still here to play. I don't know too much about Eddie, to be honest. I know he recently had the name change from Seyuhun to Eddie, but I'm not really super familiar with him and his play style.
I think the X factor for myself is that I hate playing aggro decks, I would say. I'm a very control/anti-control player. I guess that's kind of my unique style, where I prefer outgrind my opponent in resources.
My X factor, and that makes my play unique, would probably be, a lot of people would say, my aggressive play style. I'm always looking for ways where I can eke out 1 point of damage. I don't think there's anyone in Hearthstone that likes to go face as much as I do. Personal goals for this year. Goal number 1, do not get relegated, which means I have to come in not last. So goal number 1, not last. 2, of course, win would be the dream, but I think you want to set reasonable and manageable goals. And I think definitely is reasonable and manageable for me not to get relegated. And then we'll build from there.
At this point, I just want to try win worlds, but first step to win world is to be way better than the group. I think I was lucky. I think this group is the easier group. But I thought this group looked like the harder group, but after analyzing and looking at everybody, I think my group is easier, and I think I have a good chance getting out of groups.
I look forward to winning the most and losing the least. I definitely don't want to lose, and I definitely want to win, so it's really simple.
2014 World Champion, our first World Championship in Hearthstone history. Firebat going up against Eddie. Firebat can actually make a jump to first place in the division if he gets a win here over Eddie, because he'd be 4-2 and tied with Eddie, Frozen, and Strifecrow. Yeah, of course, this is dependent on Frozen and Strifecrow dropping their matches following, but an opportunity to strike. And I got a chance to talk to Firebat as well yesterday in Omnistone, and he was just talking about how serious, he keeps emphasizing how much he wants to win and how seriously he's taking it. And, he's disappointed that he's only going 3-3 so far, but at the same time, he's you know what, these are some of the best players out there. 3-3 is not bad, but I know I can do better.
Yeah, he even talks about in one of his interviews saying he was searching through Masters qualifier tournaments to see players that were getting first and having good runs with specific decks, and then reaching out to them to practice against them playing that deck, which is something that's just going above and beyond to make sure you're an expert at your craft.
Yeah.
And also one thing to note is during that little media piece that we had, both players talked about kind of their style, and Eddie said that he's more of a control combo player and hates playing aggro decks, and Firebat is always looking for ways to push the damage and be aggressive. And even though they're both playing Warrior this week, their deck lists kind of match that type of playstyle, where Eddie is playing a more control, long game style of matchup with Archivist Elysian in his main deck, and Firebat's playing a more mid-range version of Warrior with Grom Hellscream, with Karen Bloodhoof, with Sephorian Bomber, with Snip Snap, the new legendary.
Yeah, I think not playing Snip Snap in Warrior, and I don't want to just say this too boldly or have a knee-jerk reaction. I think it's the worst decision you can ever make in Hearthstone.
Whoa!
To not play Snip Snap in your Warrior. But that's how strongly I feel about it. All jokes aside, I think Snip Snap is so crucial to how Warrior just wants to function. It gives you mid-range pressure options. It gives you ways to go back onto the board. It gives you strong ways to even push damage. Let's say you stick a minion onto the board with mech in the late game.
Yep.
And more importantly, it has so much synergy across the deck and gives you flexibility that you really want. Stim Snap should be, if you are a Warrior player, Stim Snap should be in all of your decks, and I am floored that some players choose to not include it. But Eddie thankfully has it in his tertiary deck, given that I don't know if he necessarily wants to play an additional Acolyte, an Eternium Rover, and a Spellbreaker on top of that. But we'll see. I mean, one of the things that's nice about Eddie's deck lists was that he does have Arquivus Elysiana, which gives him that longevity, but I don't think Firebat plans on doing so when he has Cairn, Grom, he has even a Spellbreaker to help push past some minions to get that damage in. That being said, I can't emphasize enough the importance of these one-drops in the Warrior Mirror, specifically the Town Criers. They've been very important to making sure that you have stable early game and a nice curve. And Eddie feels like he has a good enough curve already.
Yeah, I think that the big reasoning here, and this is speculation, but I think Eddie wants to make sure that when Dynamatic comes down, that his board isn't bogged up by 1-2. The downside of this is that if he draws one of his Rushmans from his deck, or even like 2 Rushmans in a row, like he did with Ziliax,
right,
then that Ziliax could have been any other card in his deck, and it would have been a guaranteed draw. Now he still is going to play here. He just wanted the efficient armor up.
Yeah.
But being able to thin out his deck a turn sooner would have meant that maybe that Militia Commander was further down in his deck, and Ziliax would have been picked up by Town Crier, and he would have picked up a card like Dr. Boom that was better in that situation.
I mean, it also has the ability of like presenting information to Firebat. You know, like one of the things that I started really weighing was early uses of Shield Slam. And when you armor up on 2, it makes it really scary to coin out an Augmented Elic, because then they could Shield Slam it right afterwards, and then you lose the momentum that you use for the coin. Going second in any kind of matchup, actually just going second in any strategy game, period, if you go back to chess, generally puts you at a disadvantage, and the one way you can compensate for that in Hearthstone is the extra card and having that coin. So you better make sure that that coin usage is like on point. And oftentimes, if you're trying to be aggressive, you're trying to curve out with that Augmented Elic into the Clockwork Goblin, and so on and so forth. But then again, Firebat didn't even exactly have the Augmented Elic hand, right? He had this Elephant and Cairn, and that's like nothing. So in this position, you know, I kind of wonder, you know, what he's going to do for actual tempo. Because if he plays this Militia Commander, it's still 6 health on the board, so Dynamatic is it's still resilient against Dynamatic. But he also knows 2 Town Criers have been used. Or sorry, 2 Town Criers have been played. Therefore, Militia Commander is guaranteed, which means that Firebat will lose a Militia Commander on the other side.
Yeah.
So this kind of tug and war back and forth is what Firebat's weighing. Even to the point where he's even trying to swing, stopping some kind of Harrison Jones and getting that bomb in, and I like it. This is a matchup where Firebat has to be aggressive because he cannot go into the late game very confidently.
Yeah, and Dan and I did practice this matchup back and forth, and honestly, it's pretty close. In the past weeks, Eddie has kind of been in the opposite situation, where he's the player in the primary decks that didn't bring Elysiana, and he had to pressure. But he was playing with a much more control-y style Bomb Warrior. And in those matchups, we'd say, oh, the player with Elysiana is definitely favored because they have the longevity. But Firebat has just packed so much in the mid-game in his primary deck with Snip Snap, Sephorian Bomber, Cairn, Grom, that his ability to pressure is so much higher than some of the Warriors that we've seen last week. So honestly, this primary deck versus primary deck matchup is a lot closer than you'd expect, considering one player has Elysiana and the other player doesn't. But still, Firebat is still the one that doesn't have Elysiana, so he's the one that has to pressure because he won't win in fatigue.
Yeah, it's a difficult spot here because no matter how Firebat chose to trade, Dynamatic or Militia Commander or even just Ziliax, which he knows that there's a strong likelihood that all of them are in the hand, just kind of ruins one of his plays. Even just a Wrench Caliber too, right, from Eddie, that can just answer something very cleanly. So this is an attempt, I guess, to get Eddie off of his mana-efficient plays. Or maybe bait out that Militia Commander number 2 that he has a high suspicion that's in the hand already. I think Dynamatic is just a harder card to use in this matchup. by a landslide, given that you know, Snip Snap's even making its way into these warrior deck lists.
You are not fit to rule the Horde.
But this is also a pretty easy target for magnetic stuff. Imagine having Snip Snap in this spot here, TJ.
That'd be insane.
It's just, it is bonkers.
Yeah.
It's like you stick a mech and then all of a sudden you win the board. You can even magnetize one trade and then play
and
another.
play the other one on the right.
Yeah, 2-3. It's so versatile. It's just so positive and generous.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's like a mechanical crab with scissors for hands. It's like a creepier Edward Scissorhands.
Exactly.
So welcoming. So inviting.
So generous. The thing about the Ziliax play here is that he has a lot of 3s and 4s, and right now he's at 7 mana, so mana efficiency is actually fairly important to get tempo, but you also do want to answer this Cairn.
How much do you want to sacrifice to do so? If you play Militia Commander and trade over the Cairn, then both your Militia Commander and your Dynamatic die on board to a value trade from the Bane. But it looks like he is going to go ahead and do that.
Well, the nice thing about it is that by doing this, he does at least get rid of the first half of Firebat's minions, so that way Firebat, if he just uses things like Dynamatic, will end up destroying his own minion too.
True. And both these minions on board together contest the Cairn. So,
right.
What
I mean,
now?
based on Firebat's hand, I think he might use his removal fairly aggressively here. He has the ability to Militia Commander and Shield Slam or Warpath. I think Shield Slam might be better, given that... Oh, well. He's going to go for the Warpath instead. Warpath is a little bit of a harder card. Oh, he's keeping it on board. I mean, these are premium removal tools, but like I thought Firebat might be starting to shove like aggressively, but I think maybe that Eddie has too much in the hand and that he might need to get more value off of Warpath than clearing a big board. Firebat's already anticipating that he's going to need some good draws from here on out in order to come back. And in our testing game, this actually happened fairly often, where like I was playing Firebat side, you were playing Eddie side. And you know, given that I don't think we're at that level of Firebat Eddie per se, but when we were playing, it felt like Firebat's side was running out of resources a lot quicker than I thought it would, even though it had some aggressive tools. And I think that's dependent on like Eddie. If Eddie is able to line up, you know, like the first wave of removal and the second wave of removal really cleanly, it feels like Firebat deck just kind of gassed out really hard.
it does, and it really doesn't have any card draw. It cuts Acolytes of Pain. It does have double shield block, but that's just cycling itself. It has Harrison Jones.
One
So
Town Crier.
it kind of relies on curbing out. And the times that you did beat me, you just kind of play bomb stuff and then Blastmaster Boom, and I take too much damage.
Right. And now, you know, speaking of Warpath, Eddie with the ability to clear off this board. Firebat has nothing proactive, and he wants to be a proactive deck.
I guess Wrench Caliber's kind of proactive.
No, he needs like C4 Bomber here in this exact spot. Dr. Mancini's is a good pickup, though.
Yeah.
Playing Wrench Caliber in this spot opens up to a Harrison Jones, but it's not like Firebat has much of a choice here, given that, again, he chose to being a deck list to try and be more aggressive. And, I mean, that's why at this point I'm willing to relabel this warrior deck into just like a mid-range.
That belongs in a museum.
That is often what it feels like.
It does feel like that, and the mid-range deck kind of struggles at this position. Think of it like Hunter, right? Hunter sometimes, before Masters call around, had so much lack of ability of card draw, you just survive its curve, and then Hunter would be left hoping that it can top deck Kill Commander or Unleash the Hounds for lethal.
Yeah.
I'm so
In this position, it feels fairly similar. Firebat's just hoping that he can get there. But getting there is the hardest part. And now Eddie's going to have development onto the board. And that's where Firebat's saving Warpath might end up being a saving grace to at least withstand a little bit of pressure, because if Eddie chooses to press in here with Augmented Elec and Clockwork Goblins, he is very open to a Warpath clear.
The problem is, as soon as Firebat starts playing on the back foot, his chances of winning the game go down dramatically.
I agree.
Because Eddie has the ability to just hold on to his stuff and just play super defensively, used additional resources to make sure that he's healthy enough to survive until the late game. And then even if Firebat goes for a big bomb push later, Eddie's free to Archivist Elysiana, even with like 8 of his own cards still left in the deck, as long as he's destroying his own bombs. So,
yeah, the thing is, if Eddie is smart enough, he'll also realize that if Firebat doesn't remove, like let's say Firebat hero powered the face, that's too obvious that he has things like Warpath or like a Brawl or something else to answer a big white board. So Firebat, by using that Shield Slam, is hoping that Eddie will extend more onto the board, which is what happened. And with that Grom pickup, I mean, there are options for Firebat to be aggressive, but I think he wants to deal with this board first. If he uses Grom defensively in this spot, I think that kind of goes against Firebat's game plan. So clearing off this board, tanking up for 7 armor.
yeah.
This is the second Warpath, though. I think Firebat's also hoping that maybe next turn he gets some kind of ability to activate Grom, maybe a Zap, and then Eddie draws bombs. I mean, this is not over by any means. It's just looking tough.
The problem is he doesn't even have that many bombs in his deck. Right now, Eddie only has 3 bombs in the deck, and he's the one that's the aggressor right now. So it's just gonna be hard for Firebat to close out the game. Another thing to notice is Firebat only has 1 copy of Omega Assembly in his primary deck, which is another reason why it just seems like his deck just runs out of gas quickly, because in the late game, he's less likely to hit those turns where he can refill his hand with double Omega Assembly and try and ride the mech train to victory.
It's true. Smaller amount of resources, higher aggression. These are supposed to be recipes for success, but not panning out that way. It's like he's diffusing the bombs by throwing the microbots into it. He can afford to make these trades first, because even if he takes armor damage, Shield Slam should be able to cover Dr. Boom and then some.
So he deals with it and doesn't take much damage in the process. The problem is, Grom is his only card left.
Yeah, and if I'm Eddie, I'm playing full-on defensive mode, just keeping it chill. Although Wrench Caliber allows you to be more aggressive, so yeah, maybe not actually.
He's got 4 bombs in the deck right now. Wrench Caliber over the next 2 turns is another 6. Firebat does have Harrison Jones in his main deck.
There could be reasons to not play Wrench Caliber. If you think about it, it's like, oh, I want to give him less reasons for him to be able to come back.
Yeah.
But he also knows that Firebat just drew that Grom, so it's not like he's been saving a tech card for a while in the hand. Uh-oh, that's a spell breaker. That's not really useful. That's one of the cards that I know Firebat was, like, having silence is important. And he even went so far as to put 3 silences in his tertiary deck total to try and make sure that he'd be good against any kind of mech strategy.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, that Grom was dying no matter what because they make a Devastator.
But still hurts, Dan.
This seems almost laughably one-sided at this point.
Yeah.
Because of the resource count. And because Eddie has Elysiana, he's also okay with just taking it very slow. And that's why, ultimately, in a Warrior Mirror, I do feel like as much as people give the aggressive side some grief, saying it's, oh, you just play bombs on curve and hope they draw it, it's kind of scary to be on that side sometimes, because the defensive Warrior player just has to clear. That's all they have to do.
Yeah, it's like one big swing turn, and that's it. And then once you get to turn 10, it's so hard to stick minions on board. If you haven't reached the critical mass of bombs or drawn Dr. Boom or Blastmaster Boom, then you're in trouble. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, you just sit in your ivory tower and pick from your plethora of threats and responses. At this point, Eddie is just drowning in the amount of bombs and mech that he has.
Just plucking the right mech fruit off his mech tree.
Okay, yeah, and the buff from the Beryllium Nullifier, you see, making it a 5/11 instead of a 4/11.
It can get silenced, though.
Yeah, this is pretty much lights out here. I think Firebat's hoping that maybe he draws a Blastmaster Boom. In this case, it's Celiax.
Your magic shall not save
Okay draw. I like that he's playing it out, though. You never really know. Plus, Firebat also has a Mega Assembly, so we can help him maybe go even on the resource. The one saving grace here is Firebat has Dr. Boom Mad Genius. So the longer he stays in this game, and he can collect more value off of it, and if Eddie's Dr. Boom Mad Genius is his 30th card, there's still hope.
Yep.
But like we said, until then, it's looking very one-sided. And there's, what, 6 bombs in Firebat's deck? He could also be in danger of dying at any second, too.
Yes. It's kind of brutal, and the outs we're referring to are like, let's say he gets Weaponized Pinata from Delivery Drone or a Mega Assembly. Weaponized Pinata picks up his own Elysiana, picks up Azlena's Soul Thief so he can copy Eddie's Elysiana, picks up Madame Lazul, and then he gets Discover option from Archivist to get Archivist Elysiana. Very fringe case scenarios that can happen.
But if there's a lot of 1% chances, I mean, you still take them.
Yes.
And Firebat in a position where he is in desperate need of help from his deck. Now, Eddie, on the other hand, might recognize this and might even choose to be aggressive. I wonder if he's even going to hold on to these shield slams. I mean, it lines up very nicely. But with the Spark Drill, it's and the microbots on the other side, I don't think Eddie's going to want to keep down to the board. Part of the interesting, but also very difficult thing about this matchup is that minions that, if you just play a minion and hope it sticks on the board, it very rarely does that because every minion becomes a removal spell with Rush. The game fundamentally changes when both of you have the ability to rush down. And it becomes even more difficult if you are the warrior player without it. Hey, Snip Snap! I think Firebat weighing how he wants to place this last Snip Snap. If you go to the right side and make it 2 separate minions, you generally are more resilient to single target removal. So Eddie would have to Shield Slam and then Warpath, for example. Oh. He draws another bomb? Okay.
Almost.
Yeah, well, funny enough, if Firebat had stacked his life, he'd be out of range of Shield Slam. But he does know that Spark is a possibility to come out with the Shield Slam. And look at Eddie. He's thinking about dropping the Elysiana right now. And, I mean, he's relatively even in the resources.
That's bold. There are, I believe, I think there's 8 bombs, right? Because he played Augmented Elec, double Clockwork Goblin. So that's 4. Then he played 2 Wrench Calibers and swung fully with both.
Yep, so there's 8 bombs.
There's 8 bombs in the deck. So he got rid of Dr. Boom Mad Genius.
Yep.
So he has to rely on tempo to win this game, which is pretty good. Firebat doesn't have any way to draw cards. He's got an Omega Assembly in the deck, which he still has to draw it. Festeru Cult is honestly pretty good. It's just hard to kill.
Yeah, I think he just wants meat. He wants tempo. And Firebat taking the bombs 1 by 1. He is still behind the fatigue race, but with that Sephorium Bomber draw.
Have I got a bomb for you?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie's, the value of his Elysiana was pretty high. He's got a lot of big minions.
Yeah, I mean, Eddie does have a Shield Slam still. Gilnean Royal Guard. Can't do that and Shield Slam.
Oh, wow.
Jeez, talk about big, heavy minions. And the Boom Reaver with the minions that are in the deck are pretty high quality here.
Yeah, pull out a Gilnean Royal Guard or a Fester Root Hulk.
Yep. Firebat finally hitting Delivery Drone. He's been waiting for that delivery package for a while. Clockwork Goblin. Another bomb shuffled in.
It's also the biggest thing he can play from that group of mechs.
It's just small stuff here and there. Firebat can also safely conclude that Eddie does not have Dr. Boom Mad Genius, given that he's played several cards after the Elysiana and had no option, had no hero card come out.
Yeah.
A second nullifier. I mean, this could pull out anything. Gilnean Royal Guard #2. It's a big minion for Firebat to deal with. And Firebat doesn't even have a brawl in the deck.
Nope.
Bomb being drawn. Keeps getting blast shields.
There's still, like, even after this bomb, there's still 4 bombs left. All right, still 3 bombs left, I believe. Still 2 left.
Wow.
That was 4 bombs in a row.
That's still a very unlikely scenario that just happened.
Yeah.
But Eddie looks like he is smooth sailing. He is magnetic onto this this Boom Reaver. It is going to be gross. Not even Omega Devastator can deal with that 11-17.
Sure. Let's Dragon's Roar. If he needed anything else.
Yeah. Firebat gets another delivery drone though. Yeah. Maybe he could make some magic happen.
Even delivery drone, if it hits Omega Devastator, that's still only 16 damage. Well, that's the last bomb.
How did Firebat draw 8 bombs in 3 turns? I mean, it's so swingy because of that possibility.
Yeah, it's unlikely that he had a chance anyway. He could hope that, let's say, Eddie got suboptimal choices from... Omega Devastator, I don't even think deals with this 11-17. He only has 16 total damage on board.
Yeah, it looks like Firebat's just dead. And that's going to do it for game number 1. He's going to pass it over to Eddie. Give Eddie the final swing here. And that'll do it. Eddie's able to withstand Firebat's pressure, and the Cairn, the Grom, the Sephorium Bomber, all great stuff, even having Snip Snap. It all came up, but it was just a little bit too slow. Maybe you were onto something, TJ, when you said the card draw not being in the deck could be a limiting factor, given that Firebat has no Acolytes of Pain, 1 Town Crier. His former card draw is 2 Shield Blocks and Harrison Jones.
Yeah, which aren't all that reliable because, as I mentioned, Shield Block kind of just replaces itself.
Yeah. That said, Eddie also doesn't have card draw, and I feel like the more I see Warrior deck lists these days, it's like Acolyte's a one of, because there's just so much quality stuff.
Yeah.
And Warrior gets so much value off of Dr. Boom Mad Genius anyways that it might feel like you don't need the Acolyte nearly as much, especially if you play like 2 Omega Assemblies. That being said.
So we just got word that they're both staying on their primary lists.
Well, that makes sense for me for Firebat, because I don't think that his other deck list with Brawl is going to be really helpful.
For Eddie, though, he has a secondary deck which he removes Eternium Rover, Town Crier, Warpath, Shield Block, and Brawl, and adds in Barista Lynchin, Sephorium Bomber, Cairn, and Geppetto. That seems like a deck that's specifically designed for Warrior. I can't think of pretty much a single other deck outside of maybe Holy Wrath Paladin, in which case there's way better techs.
Yeah, I think against Firebat's list, given how aggressive it is, he actually wants defensive cards.
But it's not that much more aggressive than some of the other Warrior decks. And the cards that he's keeping in, like Eternium Rover, Town Crier, and Warpath, don't help you against Sephorium Bomber and Cairn and Grom. I don't know, it's just weird.
I don't disagree.
I do understand, especially because the player that has switched to the greedier list oftentimes has clogged up with a dead hand. So I get from Eddie's perspective, he's probably thinking, well, I won in game 1 and it seemed pretty easy. And I know that Firebat doesn't have a secondary or tertiary deck that's designed to beat Warrior. So why would I switch if I'm favored already with the primary deck? Why would I add more greed if I already have just enough greed to beat Firebat? Maybe that's his line of thinking.
Could be. Eddie has a very good hand, just with that Town Crier. You can just see how important Town Crier is, as we were emphasizing before. And now, another thing worth noting is usually in this position, if your opponent has a Town Crier and you do not get the armor to shield slam, but because Firebat has the Eternium Rover, you can now shield slam. And small things like that, which help build that early game advantage, but Firebat's going first, and yet Eddie's going to be driving tempo because he has that coin 3 into 3, and now with that second Militia Commander pickup, we'll be able to proactively trade and leverage tempo.
Spellbreaker, not many great targets against Eddie's deck regardless.
Yeah, this is for other decks,
Yeah.
other classes. Eddie now has the ability to Militia Commander, but does open himself up to Dynamatic no matter what he does this turn.
I wonder if because of that he might take it a little bit slow.
So you think he trades into the 4/3 and plays Clockwork Goblin instead? That's the slower play.
Yeah.
If he plays Militia Commander, trades into the Spellbreaker, he's just gonna get Dynamatic.
Yeah, I think honestly that might be the play. He could even consider just like armoring up, like trading into Spellbreaker, armoring up.
What
Oh
now?
wow! Just defensive hero power.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Just because all of his plays are somewhat weak to Dynamatic.
Except for Clockwork Goblin trade.
Clockwork Goblin trade, yes. I was thinking of a very greedy play of Clockwork Goblin kill the Eternium Rover trade. Kill the Eternium Rover. Because then if they want a Dynamatic, they have to trade in the Spellbreaker anyway.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that either.
Yeah. Because then you kill off the Eternium Rover, which is not that big of a deal, honestly. Just a 1/1. This is kind of just the quote-unquote obvious play. 4 mana, play a Militia Commander. Who cares if you leave yourself vulnerable to Dynamatic because you have the second one to follow it up.
Yeah. That said, Firebat's hand, he has a pretty good setup here with Wrench Caliber. Next turn, play the Augmented Elic, and then play Blastmaster Boom. That's, I think, his primary objectives here. Just picks the best quality legendary and it's most versatile, having Zilliax. I think Boom Reaver and Stegatron are cool, just not what he really needs. Given that, I think the Elic's going to be dead next turn. Eddie from this spot has only 2 pretty solid proactive plays in the Clockwork Goblin and the Zilliax. They're both fairly similar. Because the Zilliax plays as a 3/2, but Clockwork Goblin is a 3/3. One has Divine Shield, one does not.
All right.
Yeah, the tough part about this is that you're kind of throwing a Clockwork Goblin in to get whacked by the Augmented Elic, or sorry, by the Wrench Caliber. Firebat, if he wants it for the Blastmaster Boom, gets 3 bombs in with the Augmented Elic swing. That's the decision he has to weigh versus the Cairn.
Yeah. And I honestly think the 2 Boombots is worth it. You can follow the Blastmaster Boom up if Eddie reacts with like a suite of removal, and then follow that up with the Cairn to get that recurring damage.
Yes, this is Firebat's best play.
As good as it feels to play Cairn on 6, it feels even better to have a fully juiced Blastmaster Boom on 7.
Assuming Eddie doesn't draw a bomb here. That copy of Brawl, not going to be useful here. Eddie has the opportunity to drop that Dynamatic. He's also probably anticipating Firebat to drop the Blastmaster Boom next turn. So what's his best play afterwards? Maybe instead he can use the Dynamatic on the Blastmaster Boom the following turn. So say, for example, he trades the 2/1 to the Blastmaster Boom and the 2/2 to the Boom Bot.
He might be able to absorb some damage
Yes.
from one of the bombs and kill off.
Yeah, or maybe the other way around too. Like maybe 2/2 goes to the Dr. Boom Magic just to guarantee it. Whew. Board tension, TJ.
Yeah, there's only 1 bomb, I believe, in Firebat's deck with 1 Clockwork Goblin played. So a much smaller Blastmaster Boom. Still reasonably effective.
I mean, this is a reason. Yes, reasonably effective. Also, is the brawl in this spot. Yeah, you can even win the brawl. You have a decent chance. 2 out of 9.
Yeah,
So
maybe
a little less than a fourth of the time.
Maybe the Dynomatic play is not as great because you still have to deal with these 6 bombs somehow. Let's Firebat be able to answer.
Right.
Or the 5 bombs because you trade over 1. Use the 5 bombs however which way he wants to. Dictate all of the trades. Eddie, I think, also thinking about preemptively trading one of his militia commanders into the Blastmaster Boom in case it survives the brawl. So that way he does have a way to deal with it the following turn if it were to survive.
Pretty extreme values here for Firebat. It was like either doing max damage or minimal damage, but overall able to deal a sizable chunk. Now here comes the Cairn follow-up here for Firebat, most likely. Be kind of shocked if he chose Militia Commander.
You are not fit to rule the Horde.
Dynomatic answers the first half of Cairn very cleanly. Bomb comes down. Oof.
Just makes you feel the heat a little more.
And Eddie is 1 mana off from being able to have the ideal removal. Dynomatic Shield Block, Shield Slam. Yeah, so the funny thing about Dynomatic is that in this spot, life is actually a fairly critical resource. If you Dynomatic, you're actually just doing nothing to the power of the board. You're removing the death rattle of the board. Another way to look at it is Dynomatic is a 5 mana silence. And it's like, well, that's not really doing anything in this spot. Instead, he chooses to play the Blastmaster Boom because that has potential to do more. And then Firebat very astutely observes that Omega Devastator and Ziliax is 7 damage, which lets him clean up Blastmaster Boom very effectively. And then he can push damage.
Yeah.
While even developing tempo. This is a very good spot here for Firebat because I think most people would be tempted to save Omega Devastator in some capacity. That trade for damage wasn't what Firebat was looking for, but damage is damage. And now Eddie has to dig for answers here.
Hoping for no bomb. If he had picked up a bomb there, he wouldn't have been able to deal with the Omega Devastator. I was honestly thinking Armor Up Shield Slam and save Ziliax for Dynomatic Ziliax next turn.
Yeah.
This is a very quick use, because now the Cairn almost value trades over it, or even Militia Commander. That's kind of weird, because you have the option to just Shield Block, Armor Up, Shield Slam.
Oh my gosh.
Take 4 extra.
Firebat can also just nullify that with Ziliax.
Yeah.
I wonder if Firebat is going to play the Militia Commander or Shield Block instead. Seems like he values a card draw. That Harrison Jones would be good insurance against Ringe Caliber. Firebat making his victory push. That's the right target. That's the right damage. Dr. Boomanginius comes in hand.
In Omega Assembly. Firebat not smooth sailing just yet.
No, it's not. And it's about to get tougher because Dr. Boomanginius came in the hand. That said, for Eddie's sake, what can he do here? He can... Thinking Warpath Dynomatic plays. I think he goes for Dr. Boomanginius instead.
Yeah, it's just too hard to get that mana utilization out of the way later on.
Gets Blast Shield, so he goes up to a little over 30. Wow, Eddie was down to 10 life. It's just the amount of times I've seen Warrior rebound to practically full life is astounding how much it has.
A bomb card drawn for Firebat, though. Still 2 bombs left in Eddie's deck.
The third shuffled in.
Now the third shuffled in. So still has the ability to pressure. Eddie has yet to find a way to deal with the Cairn. In full, at least.
Yes.
Next turn, he can go something like Microbots into the Ziliax and Town Crier, then Dynomatic into the Cairn, rush that into the Clockwork Goblin. But this Militia Commander, the 2/5, just makes it that much more complicated.
Second Brawl.
Ooh.
That is such a big pickup here for Eddie. And in the ideal scenario, he might be able to even utilize his Dynamatic as a follow-up.
Yeah, if say the Clockwork Goblin lives and the Bane comes out, he gets the Dynamatic. And
Oh my goodness, the Town Crier, which took 1 damage, ends up being the lone survivor. So something that was fortunate for Firebat ends up being something that bites him later on with the second Brawl drawn. And this Dynamatic is a guaranteed clear. Eddie chooses instead. Another Blast Shield.
Yikes.
Firebat is really feeling it.
For you.
This is tough. So much life being gained to offset the damage. But truth be told, Dr. Boom Mad Genius had so many good options that a lot of them would feel devastating. But at least if he was getting non-armor options, that Firebat had a plan to get out.
Yeah, and this is interesting because this is Eddie's choice of sticking to his primary deck kind of paying off. If he had been on his secondary deck with Barista Lynch and Sephorian Bomber Cannon and Geppetto Joybloods, his hand would have been full of a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, he wouldn't have that second Brawl.
Wouldn't have had that second
He
Brawl.
might not even have drawn that early Town Crier to get his removal.
Or the shield block to be able to have the armor to shield slam the Omega Devastator.
Or the Warpath that looks like he might use.
Yeah. So that his secondary deck was screaming, play this against Warrior. But it turns out that his primary deck, specifically against Firebat, was the correct choice all along. So hats off to Eddie for recognizing that.
So I think for Firebat, his plan is now to either draw straight up gas like Omega Assembly or to get his Dr. Boom Mad Genius. And that is not it. That is a Warpath being drawn here for Firebat. And if I'm Eddie, taking the board here. Super fast turn, doesn't need to think much about it. Security Rover with that 6 health buff being very nice. Firebat has Wrench Caliber, but guess what Eddie also just drew? The Harrison Jones. And that is why Eddie stayed stayed true with the course. And you know, having Harrison Jones in his deck is fairly important.
Eddie also just rotating hero power between Microbot and Blast Shield for the past like 5 turns.
That's true.
Microbot, Blast Shield. Started off with Blast Shield, then went Microbot, then got another Blast Shield, then got another Microbots, and now back to another Blast Shield. So ability to fight for the board and to gain health. Very solid for Eddie right now.
Yeah. At this point, if I'm ready to call it here. I think Eddie just has such an overwhelming advantage that it's unlikely Firebat gets there through the distance of damage. He definitely can't win in fatigue and is behind in resources. I think in the end, as much as things didn't pan out and that early game draw from Eddie was strong both games, it does feel like that if Eddie gets a pretty decent above average draw, it's like difficult for Firebat to overcome.
And it kind of feels like a decent above average draw is just Zilliax at some point in the game. Like that's almost what it feels like.
It does feel like that. And you know, I kind of wonder if like, you know, there's definitely a lot of good stuff to what Firebat's thinking. We've seen this list of warriors succeed against other warriors. But at least in our testing, I felt like Firebat's deck encountered this fairly often. We played like 5 or 6 games straight, and almost every game it was like this, where like either I won with overwhelming bomb damage and pressure, or I got gassed out. But the common denominator across all those games, TJ, was that I had no cards in the hand.
At the end of the game.
Yeah, at the end of the game.
Whether
it was
you
always
lost
like
or
1 or 2
won,
cards.
no
It was
cards.
1 or 2 cards.
Yeah.
And that is the edge that you play with. I think Firebat's looking for any possible ways that he can find an out here.
Oh, Warpath on the board with Security Rover just feels terrible.
Yeah, he's actually increasing the power on board if he goes for all the Warpaths until he kills Harrison Jones.
I guess he can Warpath one more time and Shield Slam. Oh, jeez. He gets a Warpath twice more. It takes 7 power off board.
Yeah, this is bad. I don't really think Firebat's wrong for doing this. It's just it's just ugly. And now Eddie is going to rinse and repeat. Beryllium Nullifier, go. The 2 buffed mechs coming into here.
Yeah, doesn't even need to play Orange Calibers to try and end the game, because he knows that Firebat's not going to even be able to deal with this board that he does have, and he doesn't want to leave himself vulnerable to Harrison Jones. And at this point, it's got to be a hard read that it's Harrison Jones, because he's just not playing it. And Firebat desperately needs card draw, and Harrison's the only way he can go about it.
Snip Snap is good, but can't single-handedly bring him back into this game. There's 6, 12.
Oh, the Kaboom hero power too. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
It's so clean.
Yeah, Eddie has all the answers. I mean, here again, he also drew Warpath just for extra measure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Firebat completely outmuscled here. Pretty fast Warrior games, all things considering.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the nature of both players' decks. A lot of times in control mirrors, it goes long because both players are playing a control style deck. But Firebat's definitely even more so on the mid-range plan in both play style and deck building. And just Eddie, 1 or 2 turns of stabilization and is able to get out of the woods there and pick up a 2-0 victory over Firebat.
Yep, nice win here for Eddie to cement his lead back into the division. He was at 4-2 after being 4-0. Had a little bit of a rough, or sorry, 4-1. Had a little bit of a rough end to the week there. But, you know, taking a look at Firebat's deck list, I do think that that was ultimately maybe the deciding factor here, is that I don't really think Firebat played anything wrong with his hand. I think he made some good reads and some good technical plays. The big issue was just doesn't have enough gas to keep up the Warrior and didn't have enough tempo, because Eddie would have the response every single time. And sometimes you don't, I mean, that's just how it is. You're not going to beat a Warrior hand that has all the answers. That's what the Warrior deck does best.
Yeah, and honestly, Eddie's deck has kind of like better tempo tools. The only thing he doesn't have is a second Eternium Rover, but he's got 2 Town Criers as opposed to Firebat's 1, so his ability to find Rush Minions is higher. And then down the curve, he just matches 1-to-1 with everything, where Firebat has a Spellbreaker in the 4 slot instead of a second Omega Devastator, which
gives him more late game.
Which gives him more late game potential and one Omega Assembly instead of 2. So it's just not enough gas, not enough of a tempo advantage to get there. And Eddie was able to just find, like I said, 1 stabilization turn each game, and that was enough to give him the win.
Gotcha. All right, let's go ahead and talk to Eddie, who's waiting on the line here with us. Eddie, you there?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congrats on your win, 2-0. You know, going into this head-to-head, did you feel pretty confident going up against Firebat and his deck list here?
I did some practice, and at first it looked kind of bad, right? Because he has like Karen, Gromrosh, and he seems to just has more threats. But when I actually play the matchup, I don't actually think like it's that bad for me, because he doesn't have any brawl, so he doesn't have any removal kinds, and the removal for Warriors are really strong, right? Double brawls, and I also like I also have double Omega Assembly for late game. So it's not like his deck doesn't always get to continue the pressure after like turn 7 or 8. So it's the win con for his deck is similar to with double brawls. It's just kind of Blastmaster and kind of go like play bombs, play weapons, and then swing face. And I realized that with my primary list, I can probably just defend well enough that I didn't play my secondary list for a second game.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart observation you made, because we thought like, yeah, you know, Karen knows like the strike back is good, but yeah, when you play defensive, and it aligned with our testing too, that seemed to be the case here.
Yeah.
So Eddie, you know, you kind of started off really hot and you were in the lead for division, and now you're back into first place. Were you sweating a little bit because you know your lead was slipping away there and everything was so close?
Yeah, I revised a little bit against PNC game. I realized he was lagging really hard when I was watching the VOD, and he actually gave me some kind of chance to come back, right? But unfortunately, didn't get the win. but glad to pick it up here and looking forward to try to keep playing my games and try to do well.
Gotcha. One comment that I heard in passing was that people observed that you seem to just bring warrior. Period.
Yeah.
Now, I know that you do consider other classes, I think, or I hope you do. Can you talk a little bit about just, why 4th week in a row bring warrior here when everyone else has been switching at least once?
I was definitely considering switching, especially since I talked to Monsanto, etc. They brought Mage, and they were kind of convincing me that I should not bring the same class because it's very easy to get target. Like looking at Bloody Face lineup, I don't even have Mage tech, so the second game for this week would be hard for me. But I just think Warrior power level is very strong, and I did consider some other decks. I don't want to put it out here because I might bring it for Vegas. But I personally think that Warrior is just very strong, and you can definitely target. I think Mage is definitely one of the better ones to target, especially since I don't have the Mage tech for it. But overall, I think it's just so consistent in what it's supposed to do, and there's a lot of ways you can cheese wins you're not supposed to with Blastmaster. Like a lot of bad matchups like against Rogue or against like Hunter where you play bad matchups, you just try curve out and play Blastmaster on 7. And more often than not, you're going to get there. And which is what I like about Warrior. You can play the control side, you can play the aggressive side. It really depends on what your hand gives you, and you can depend on where you line with, which is why I like a lot.
All right, you want to make a bet, TJ? Eddie brings Warrior to Vegas?
I've been cooking up something special. He brings this exact list. He just puts a snip snap in there. Yeah. It's like, this is my tech. Deal with it.
We're just teasing you, Eddie. Congratulations on your victory.
I brought Warrior every week, so it's pretty common that people keep thinking, oh, whether is he gonna bring Warrior again or not? I do thought about that a lot too.
It's the mind games. You throw rock every time. You really mess with your opponents, that's for sure. All right, well, congrats on your victory, Eddie, and good luck against your match against Bladeface this weekend.
Thank you.
All right, so 2 matches in the books. Firebat going to look for that extra W later on this weekend. But if I know Firebat, he's going to come back swinging and tie it up because every week he's gone 1-1.
1-1.
So he's destined to win the next one.
Yes, he is.
And hey, I mean, look, if I can pull a 50% win rate against the players of these caliber, I think I'll be pretty happy. But I know all these players want more than that. They want the results, and they want to improve. But that's our 3rd match, TJ, in the books. A Warrior Mirror that went pretty fast, don't you think?
Second match.
Our 2nd match.
But yes, Dan, it did. Love to see more of those throughout the day because we have another Warrior Mirror match kind of later on.
Right. But first, we're going to have a Warrior versus Mage, which I think Luna's Pocket Galaxy may have an appearance as ETC will take on Zalay. So don't go anywhere. More Hearthstone Grandmasters action for the Americas continues when we return.